Well, hello everybody. Didn't hit the button fast enough. Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is Gypsy. If you ever get a chance to left a link, check them out. Great band of the 70s and a vibe that I always really dug. It was cool. So, favor everybody and thank you for stopping in and being part of this. Y'all are just beautiful people. Such love and such there's a healing vibe that goes here. And speaking of healing vibes, one of our tribe members, Polanka, her son Isaiah was apparently on the way to the store, and I don't know whether this was this morning. I'm assuming it is, but he was going up there to buy chips and candy and was shot twice. So let's just take a moment and I spent a good deal of meditation and just speaking healing into Isaiah's body, and I have not heard any updates. So just let's just keep little Isaiah in our uh, thoughts and send around protection. It's folks, it's just, it's the reality that we live in here. So welcome everybody, speaking favor over you all this day. May favor grace you and may peace surpass all understanding, mount guard and protection over you and your house this day. So yeah, so good to see everyone. I'm still wanting to go back and listen to Gypsy again. I mean, it's just they're just a really good band. And hello to Keishi 95 for all of those out there who know Keishi, and one of the best radio stations of the 70s, no doubt. I'd have to put them right up next to K101 in Houston, Texas. So that's just some of my thoughts. Anyway, so good to see everybody. We just got a groovy group here. I mean, if you're feeling down, this is the group to come in, get into the chat room. They'll lift you up, they'll edify you. And by the time you leave, you'll be able to do that to someone else. As Trina and I were talking yesterday, and it's so true, folks, if you have healed yourself through trauma, in whatever form that trauma has taken, and you've come out, you're a healer, and the world needs you. You have a gift, and the only way gifts work is that if you put them to work. And so start healing others around you. That's the thing world needs. So yeah, let's see. Posey says 7:77 a.m. In New York City. Wolfman Jack. There we go. Absolutely. There was a few back in the day. KGO there in San Francisco. It was really a time back when FM wasn't even really used. FM was primarily classical music. Wasn't that well populated, and then that underground radio started, and the records that were banned on the AM became the stand on the FM, and from there, folks, it's all rock and roll from there on out. Love the posters that the radio stations had back in the day. Some of them are really well done. The artists were just fantastic. Obviously, they were tripping. And anyway, yeah, we could use some of that magic today. No doubt about it. I know a Big Al is here in the Denver area. Hello there, Steve Zerloff. How you doing, brother? My wife has a job where we just can't have visitors. It's just, it's crazy here right now. But anyway, Al, we'll have it one day when restaurants will be open, because there aren't any that's open up anymore. I mean, it's gotten weird. Hello, Alan. Good to see you. And John Fitzpatrick, how are you doing? Kent, How are you? We are all groovy people here. Deborah Sloan, good to see you. Robert V is in the house. Peter, I saw all your comments. You were just having a great conversation. I was digging it. Posey, Brian, 1958. Mad Magazine was my favorite as well. Coyote Prophet, good to see you. Brother David Castle, hello, much love. I know David Barry. If he's not here, he's listening. There he is. You see, I had an image of David in my head. I really did. And then I looked down there and bam, there he is. Good to see you, brother. Hey, Kaz. Good to hear you, hon. And Marsha Price. Marsha and I are going to be getting together. So what else is going on? Darth, good to see you. Well, hey, we're all here to, by the way, Robert V, tomorrow night and starting tonight, probably, but definitely tomorrow night, you are going to be in the spot, brother, if there's no clouds, to see the Northern Lights. Those of you up in Michigan, up in Canada, going to be a hell of a show. Get your cameras out, send me the pictures. Love to see them. Here where I live in Denver, too much light pollution. We may be able to get some on the horizon, but anyway, yeah, it's going to be wild. Check it out. Send me some pictures. That's what I'm saying. Joyce, are you serious? Good to see. Good to hear you. See you. Let's see what else going on. Michael Musgraves, good to see you. Bosto and Fava to you. There's Tanya, good to see you as well. And Jules, good to see you. So, what's happening? I had a little bit of the 70s music going on, Casey and the Sunshine Band. And, oh, man, yeah. I think what also the world could use is some disco. Let's bring back disco, Oh, that's right. I guess with all this nonsense, you couldn't really, kind of shake your booty, so to say. Shame, isn't it? It's a shame. Hey, Cheesesteak, good to see you, buddy. Barry Chad, hello. Beloved Abstract, good to see you. Yikes, yeah. Could you imagine that? Wild Time in the Sky. You got that right, Robert. Absolutely. Take some pictures, brother, if you can. Be kind of cool. It's amazing when Jules, yeah, I love the oldies. The oldies for me were Frank Sinatra, the big band era. I played the clarinet, played the bassoon, played the flute, and Benny Goodman was, a hero of mine. He played the clarinet like it was, his play toy. I mean, it was something else. But now they're saying, "Hey, Sarah, how you doing, dear? Um, classical rock." Classical rock. And I'm going, they don't make rock and roll today. It's unfortunate, not the way that it was, but it's classical rock. I'm going, wow, okay. Hey, Brandy, good to see you. Yes, everything is well. Hey, Janie. But anyway, I digress, but it's all right. Jules, yeah, the 40s was really kind of a cool era. It really was the time of the big bands, the swing bands. I love that music. Back in, I lived in Austin, and back in 98, 99, there was a club that opened up, and that's all they played was big band. And it was a place where you could go in and have a great time. Enjoyed it. Anyway, yeah. Barry, no argument for me on that one at all. What can you say? Wow, so we had some people that like swing music. How about that? See, it's an eclectic group. We're diverse in our musical taste, as royal as our reading, our philosophy, our points of view. It's what makes this group work, and it works really well, and it's blossoming and it's growing. And I often tell other people that are in the politics thing, I said, you ought to come in and step into our chat room. because y'all could learn a thing or two. You could really learn what it means to be diverse, to be acceptance, and not, put any conditions or any other restraints on anything other than acceptance. And anyway, hey, Scotty boy, good to see you, buddy. Lucky Stone is in the house as well. Good to see you, buddy. And Carlton played slide trombone. How cool is that? Had a good friend in the 8th grade who played trombone. He was really good. Fantastic. You see? Joan Baez. Hey, Loretta. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. John Lennon. Yeah. My wife and I were talking about that. I know exactly where I was at 40 years ago, yesterday. And when John's life was taken, and I was back in the exact room. I used to play poker every Monday night, and I had a group of guys that we had played cards together for years, and we would meet at each other's house, and we were meeting at a particular guy's house. I still remember it, outside Arnold, Missouri. Anyway, and we were watching Monday Night Football with Howard Cosell and Don Meredith, excuse me, and they interrupt the program. And I think it was Howard K. Smith, I think, and that's when the news broke. So yeah. Anyway, we say hello to you, John. You brought us and still do much joy in your music. So anyway, there we go. There we go. Well, how cool is that, Carl? It says his father and uncles were called the Acromaniacs, and they performed as comedy acrobats in vaudeville and the burlesque. Yeah, now that is really cool. See, that's a history that's lost. Vaudeville, burlesque. I mean, that was, pretty progressive if you think about it. I mean, the people that vibe, I mean, yeah, that's pretty progressive. So thanks for sharing that. That is really cool. I am glad I read that out, and welcome and thank you so much for sharing that. Those are the type of memories that all of us should be sharing with others, because it brings us joy, and that's cool. That's that telepathic magic. That's what I'm saying. Could you imagine, though, the life that those guys lived, going from city to city, town to town, doing things that most of us would never even think about. Um, and yet they did it because they wanted to. It brought them joy. That, boy, if we could capture that, we would be a happy place, man. We would be out there doing, we would be doing the John Travolta Saturday Night Live, and then we would step forward and go to Michael and see him doing, Chain of Fools. There we go. That's all I got to say. All right. So we're on our book. What else did I forget anything else? No. Mm-mm. Nina the Mystic has her show tonight. I think she's going to do a live show right after this one. Anyway, if you get a chance, check her out. That would be good. All right. So, hey, Emperor X, good to see Lost in Space. All right. So let's get into our reading. This is a cool read. I mean, we do cover some great material here. That's all I got to say. It's just freaking fantastic. Let me hide myself. There we go. So the Photosol Dynasty. I love this guy's take. I mean, I don't know where this came from, and if it's true in his reincarnation, I mean, I'm completely open to receive that. I mean, it's like, okay, I used to read a history that was printed in a book that had been so manipulated, so mistranslated, that it virtually had nothing that I could actually relate to. My point being, I can relate to this. All right. Contrary to common knowledge and belief, the Hebrews of ancient Egypt did not live in a life of suffering and did not perform forced labor the way it is described. They were more like servants than slaves, just like we are here in the United States. Yeah. I'll save and reserve for those type of comments on my Thursday night Steiger perspective. But anyway, and they lived their lives as second-class citizens, so they had a caste system, and even third-class citizen. We still got that today. They did not have rights like the Egyptians and did not get paid for their work. They only received food, clothing, and shelter. Kind of like, socialism, communism, well, I think it was a dictatorship, wasn't it? The pharaohs didn't mess around anyway. They did not own any assets. Everything was given to them by the Egyptians, more accurately, the pharaoh. The last pharaoh and the one who ruled during my incarnation was relatively cruel and harder on the people than the ones before him, despite being an entity with higher powers, just like the other pharaohs before him. Although he was not a pure Photosol, he was still considered a god to the nation. His wife was Pharaoh. Pharaoh died at a relatively young age. She was a pure Photosol who went through the Baraka process at a young age and became a high priestess before she married the Pharaoh. It is not clear to me why she died at such a young age. It was more definitely not typical for an offspring of the Photosol to die at such a young age. Even more interesting is how the Pharaoh and the Phaetotop didn't succeed in healing her, if indeed she was sick, with the magical staff that they had in their possession. You know what I get when I read this? I'm thinking immediately of Star Trek, the tricorder. Mm-hmm. And isn't it odd how much SG-1 actually had so much of this in their script? I mean, I'm a huge fan of Stargate 1, and I've got out the whole season, and it's really interesting because the more I read in Egyptian lore, and even in this document, they had something, folks. They had technology. Maybe the guy old did exist. Who knows? Anyway, I know many souls were helped and saved from death with the magical staff. I suppose she reached her destiny in this reincarnation. Roka, who was Pharaoh's daughter, went through the Bakra process in the Holy Temple in the Pharaoh's palace under the supervision of the Phototop, who was the high priest, who was customary, which was customary of every Pharaoh child from the offspring of a Photosol. Mano and Roka built a very close relationship as young children, as they were both students of the priesthood. We need these schools today. We need the mystery schools. Screw the education system that we have here in America. It sucks. If we brought back the mystery schools, I'll guarantee you our children would advance at a rate. Yeah, that would be the problem. They would be, huh? Yeah. Anyway, I digress. They spent a lot of time together, worked together, and learned together. Roka loved and was loved by Mano, and since she was a child, their love was destroyed because she chose to marry her father, which was very accepted at the time. You see how, how we would say something is evil? You can't say evil is evil. It's just your perspective, baby. It's the way it is. Anyway, we continue. Due to her mother's death, because she, like the Pharaoh, was from the offspring of the Photosol, and they still do it in the bloodlines today, the royal bloodlines. From the start, The love between Mano and Roka never stood a chance to come to fruition, since Mano was originally a Hebrew servant. Visiting the wrong side of the tracks, was she? Whereas Roka was from the Photosol dynasty. Roka had to pass the Bakra process in order to be worthy to marry her father, Pharaoh, which is a process that took many years. At the age of 18 years old, Roka married her father, Pharaoh, in the wedding ceremony in which Mano was present along with the rest of the priests. Roka received the title of the Queen of the Pharaohs, as well as the title of the High Priestess, who possessed immense power and knowledge. Roka had a personal assistant since she was born, whose was named Miriam. Mer was a short, old, fat, and mentally limited woman. Colorful language. Mer was very obsessive over Roka. Mer felt as though she was more than just a servant or a mother to Roka. According to my memory, Mer was a simple Egyptian woman who never married nor brought children to the world. Roka had a daughter named Nina, that's in his current life, who was also sent to go through the Bakra process since she was a daughter of the Pharaoh. She went through the Bakra process in the Holy Temple of the Pharaoh's palace under the supervision of the Fatahadat. Manotop was a teacher to Gamma as well. Mano and Gamma fell in love. In the year 2448, they took advantage of the period of the Great Confusion, the Exodus, and fled with the Hebrews to the land of Israel. In the year 2449, that's according to the Hebrew calendar, Mano and Gamma got married in the desert on the way to the Holy Land when Mano was 50 and Gamma was 17. Their wedding was on the 1st of the Tishril, which was also Mano's birthday. They chose not to have children and instead dedicated their lives to their spiritual work. They both lived very long and full lives and died together in the evil fires of the destruction of the first holy temple, their home in Jerusalem before the Babylonian exile on the 9th of Av on the year 3339, according to the Hebrew calendar, 421 BC in our calendar. Mano was 939 years old. Wow. And Gamma was 906 years old. Can we just stop here? Let's just talk about this. When I see this, and it's in the books, it's in the Bible, it's in the Torah, it's replete throughout all the cultures of a time when humans were able to live very long lives. Some past 1,000. There are those in India who are still alive, who they say are 2,000 years or older. But here's my point. You and I have been robbed. Let's just say we've been screwed, blued, and tattooed a fool because we think in our limited, programmed minds, oh, well, you're 50. Oh, too bad. Oh, she's so old. She's 90 years old. There was a time when you would be just an adolescent at 100 years old. You wouldn't come of age until you were probably 300, 350 years of age. And in that time, do you think that people would have learned, if nothing else, by trial and error, retaining memories of almost a millennia in an incarnation? We don't talk about these things because how do you go to the other side with this type of knowledge, and how would that compare to us when we transverse to the other side with less than 100 years? They've taken from us our ability to increase our IQ. Listen, if people were living to be nearly 1,000 years, what would you say their IQ was? Damn sure guarantee you wasn't no 100, no 200. How could you not increase in intelligence? Today, our species is regressing in intelligence. So when I read these kind of things, it opens my mind to a world of unlimited possibilities. And listen, the past, we are these folks' future. I know many of them transcended beyond just what they would say common knowledge. Anyway, we continue. Their bodies were never buried. They both served as high priest until the day they died. Gamma was the head priestess, duty of the high priest Sarah, which was Mano's new name, title in Israel, in secrecy because it was not accepted at the time for a woman, especially a Gentile, to hold such a position of power. I have one question on this one because of my understanding of, I have a book called The Tribal Wars of what we would call the children of Israel. And it's a clear distinction because the children of Israel were not Hebrews. In fact, Hebrews, in the truest sense of the word, is a commingling of Sumerian, Egyptian, and what all you could say would be in the area of Palestine, which was where Abram come from Sumer. Abram was a high priest who served the moon goddess. It's always a story that we won't get into it here, but so to the term Gentile, I don't know how long this was after the law was given, because they weren't truly Hebrews in the true sense of the word until they were given the law by the magician we call Moses. Well, anyway, especially Gentile to hold such a position of power. Gamma was an Egyptian woman of the pharaohs from the offspring of the Photosol. She never converted her destiny or her essence into Judaism. But she was part of the new Jewish nation and highly respected by all. It is important to note that although Mano and Gamma loved and married each other, their connection and relationship would have never been accepted by the Pharaoh if they would have stayed in Egypt, because Mano's past of being a Hebrew slave and Gamma being the granddaughter of the Pharaoh. Now, maybe I'm just being super critical here, but they could never have been a Hebrew slave, a servant. But here he made the term slave. All right, so I'm being technical, but if they were servants, then let's call them Hebrew servants. Anyway, as priest, Mano and Gamma attained the ability to experience and see unlimited strength of higher powers, downfalls, wars, and plagues. They earned the ability to see, work with, and accompany the most powerful people of the Jewish nation. They were also part of the Jewish nation's journey in fulfilling its destiny all the way to its downfall on the 9th of Av in the year 3339 or 421 BC. They hid religious objects and mystical magical tools of different kinds under the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. And that technology is still there today waiting to be found. and brought to the world's awareness. Well, I got a sense if they find it, I don't think we're all going to get to have the benefit of it. Among the different objects buried under the Holy Temple exist 3 original Torahs that were written by Moses and his assistants. I emphasize his assistants. Okay. When Mano and Gamma fled from Egypt during the Exodus, they were able to make the magical staffs. Well, now this is interesting. And bury them under the Holy Temple. The Torah in those days was learned as oral Torah and not the Torah that we know today. Mano and Gamma served the nation for many years with the knowledge they acquired in Egypt as priests. They did so according to the laws of the Jewish religion. As high priest, Mano and Gamma knew how to communicate with animals through speech and telepathy. Okay, that would make Balaam, remember Balaam and the donkey? You know, donkey said, "Why the hell are you beating me, man? You're the one screwed up in the head." Of course, Balaam goes, "What the hell is up with this? I knew I shouldn't have drank that much." Let's just continue. Others from the royal palace, such as the pharaohs, Roka, and the Fatatop, knew how to do this as well. The last pharaoh's favorite animal was a lion named Chisam. Chisam was very close to Roka, Gamma, and Mano when they were kids in the pharaoh's palace. Now that would be just as cool. I remember when I was stayed at the Mirage, and they made us screw up in any way. I got an upgrade, and the concierge comes to the door and says, "Compliments of management," and looked it up, front row tickets to Siegfried and Roy. I was so close you could smell the tigers as they pass by, along with the elephants and everything else. And you just can't help but not envy the fact that you would want to go up and just give them a big hug. The fact that they ate their trainers, well, we just move on. They went their separate ways when they left Egypt during the period of the Great Confusion, the Exodus. Chisholm was born in the year 2415 and died in the year 2450. That is 1345 BC to 1310. Wow, that's interesting. Can you imagine talking to an animal like a lion? What wisdom would they be able to share to us? After the Exodus, on the 15th of Nisan in the year 2448, according to the Hebrew calendar, 1312 our time, Mano and Gamma, along with the Hebrews, left Egypt and arrived at Mount Sinai, which is actually Mount Krakrum in the present day, on the 1st of the 7th, on the 6th of 7 in the year 2448, the holiday of the Sabbath. God came down to Mount Sinai and spoke the 10 commandments. The following day, on the 7th of Sivan, Moses went up to the mountain for 40 days to get the 10 commandments. Moses came down with the 10 commandments, the tablets, on the 17th of Tammuz, 2448, and broke them out of anger due to the infamous golden calf story, the nation's sin. Moses went up to the mountain once again, and on the 18th of Tammuz for 40 days to ask for forgiveness and atonement for the sins of the Hebrews. He came down on the 28th of Av. Moses went up into the mountain for the third time for another 40 days on the 29th. Now, I did a whole thing on the Kivav. It's very interesting what the Vatican says happened on this. But anyway, on the 29th of Av, after sunset, to get a second set of tablets, which is still preserved under the Dome of the Rock. Moses came down from the mountains on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, in Hebrew. Is that right? Yom Kippurim? Yeah. According to the Hebrew calendar, on the 10th of Tishril in the year 2449 at sunrise, according to the Hebrew calendar. For the last time, although there are no codes in these writings, I am purposely giving you the details of the dates since they will be important one of these days. Whoever knows the code for the book Rays of Light, as well as the pyramid code, will find these dates and details used quite often to continue their work and understanding. Well, so how long did Moses stay up there? Let's see. On the first, okay, that's when God came down to Mount Sinai. On the 6th of Sivan in the year 2448, God came down, spoke the 10 commandments. Isn't that interesting? Spoke the 10 commandments. That's the first time I've actually read this, because in the Gentile Bible, the Christian Bible, that is not in there. So that had to be a hell of a thing to hear a God speak. Would freak most people's ass right out. All right, so the following day on the 7th, Moses went up to the mountain for 40 days. Then he came down, broke them. He went back up for another 40 days. So there is 80. He came down on the 28th, then went up into the mountain for the third time for another 40. So now he's 120 days. Think about that. What did that dude do for 120 days in the presence of whatever the Elohim are? Because that's what he was dealing with. He was dealing with an Elohim. So 120 days, the dates. All right. At the end of the Pharaonic era came the Exodus. As this era came to an end, the secrets of the universe, along with different technologies, were lost. Bummer. Among the sacred technologies that perished were magnets, lasers, and light energy. You know, that's how the Nazis got the first UFO. They figured the magnets out, which were used to build the pyramids, much like the guy down at the Coral Castle down in Coral Gables, Florida. From this point forward, Egypt declined and eventually became what it is today, a poor, primitive nation. My father, my guide, and my rabbi was the man who planned the Exodus. He was also the secret helper to Moses throughout the negotiations to release the Hebrews from slavery into freedom. My father, until the day he died, was the right-hand man of Moses, along with the rest of the rulers of the military and the leaders who came after him. Isn't it odd? If you look at this, you can see that socially and culturally, we've changed very little. For me, he was a teacher. With his help, I became the high priest in Jerusalem, with neither myself nor my wife, who is not even a Hebrew, being part of the family of Aaron, the first high priest in Israel, or the tribe of Levi. So they were in the Levitical bloodline. Interesting, interesting. Now, if you've never studied the Levitical bloodline, you really should. Again, you know, I was in this religion for 50 years, and a greater portion of it was always spent identifying back with the Hebraic roots. And it's interesting that they are part of the original bloodline of Levi. Interesting, interesting. Well, let's see how much this went to what they taught me in Bible school. Aaron, the first high priest in Israel, was a half-brother of Moses. His mother became pregnant from an ancient Pharaoh. Now, this is very interesting. Aaron was the offspring of Photosol, who were aliens. Aaron's family were the original priest, but due to interbreeding over the years, we cannot be sure that a high priest is really from the Aaron family or the Levi tribe. How interesting. I wonder if they get in with Miriam here. Folks, for me, this is very interesting because, well, I studied this, and this is very interesting because well, something happened in this period of time, and I love the story. Over the past few years, I have met and recognized people from my first incarnation. I don't always remember everyone all the time. For reasons unknown to me, the memory comes and goes. Eleazar, the high Eleazar, the high priest, Connie Cohen, excuse me, that's in his current life, I guess, replaced his father Aaron after his death. I, Sarah, and the son of Amram from the Minishi tribe replaced him as the high priest upon his death. I wonder if that's the Manasseh. Anyway, there were head priests who worked under me as my deputies. Eleazar's younger brother, Navad, Levi, in my current reincarnation, did not take his natural place as the high priest after the death of his brother. Eleazar, this was even more odd since Eleazar did not have biological children of his own. Rather, he had adopted children that were never going to be the next in line for the high priest position. Nadavah became the high priest under my command, and he was responsible for looking after the holy temple. He didn't get the role as the high priest because my father at the time made sure that I acquired the role as high priest. Today, some people may call this an act of deception and a political crime, but that is how things were worked at the time. Amram felt that his son was more suited to be the high priest, especially since he had undergone the Baccarat process and possessed supernatural powers along with knowledge of the secret of the universe that very few were lucky enough to receive. Nadavad died a short time after, about 10 years, and was then replaced by Aaron's grandson, Pinchas. This goes to show that for hundreds of years, the high priest was not from the Cohen family or from the Levi tribe as the rest of the high priest and Moses were. Well, that would pollute things, wouldn't it? To top it all off, Sarah's wife, Gamma, who was not only a Gentile, but a pharaonic alien from the Fadisal dynasty, served as the head priestess in secrecy. Hell of a foundation, isn't it? Long story short, the whole priesthood was a farce. Doesn't surprise me. This information will revolutionize many basic Jewish traditions as well as its belief system. I don't think they're going to accept it. There is nothing new under the sun. What was, will be, and what will be already was. Yeah, that's Ecclesiastics, by the way. So they had corruption back then. Imagine that. Intrigue, brother killing brother, brother killing sister, sister killing brother. It's all about the power, baby. Quite amazing. Again, I don't know if the story is true, but it's a good read. The Secretary of Defense of Pharaoh was a man who was very close and loyal to the Pharaoh. His name was Satis. He was a great warrior. Of note, the army symbol and the symbol of the pharaohs was the eagle. How odd that Rome picked that up, and so did what? Nazi Germany? And, oh yes, the United States as well. And how many others? The eagle was ruled by the pharaohs like many other animals in the palace. The eagle symbol appeared on buildings, weapons, and also on combat helmets. In modern day, the eagle is the symbol of countries like the United States and Germany, and even Nazi Germany during the reign of Hitler. The eagle is found on many government buildings and various monuments in the world today. Tomorrow, when you tune into the Steiger Perspective, we're going to talk about the Nuremberg rules that are being violated. Anyway, I digress. Satis was tall, noble, and handsome, just like me. He had several wives and lots of children. One of his children was Meheraba. Abraham, no, that's in his current incarnation. Okay. He was also part of the high priest since childhood. Although he was from the Photosol dynasty, and I was a Hebrew slave, we became great friends. His father was also very fond of me, and we always found ourselves studying and working together. Eventually, we both completed the Baccarat process and became minor priests under the Phototop's supervision. We parted ways when I fled from Egypt with my wife, my father, and the rest of the Hebrews during the Exodus. Another person who I've known for many years in my current reincarnation is Shula, the daughter of Adam. Shula was Yeshua's son of Nun in her first incarnation. Yashua, I think it's still Yeshua, father of Nun, was actually Adam. Yosharu, this is funny. It's amazing when you get a word in your head and you already know it. Yeshua was the son of my aunt, making him my first cousin. He was my age, and we grew up together as children, as Hebrew slaves, until I was taken from my parents' home. Yeshua reached a very high place in the Hebrew Jewish ruling class as a Jewish military man and was very close to Moses, Aaron, and the high priest, and also my father, Amram. Amram at the time controlled everything and everyone behind the scenes without anyone's knowledge or understanding. Do you think that's still going on today? Sometimes I get the idea, yes. Today, it is very amusing to think about. I'm trying to figure out where Amram acquired his many talents and powers back then. A question arises in my mind. Is it possible that Rabbi A was with all of his reincarnations and talents, was in fact an alien, a photosol, who lived among us for thousands of years in various disguises? You know, there are stories of about certain people. I say people, and these people, well, they always seem to disappear from their families, their businesses, their obligations, and get off the map. But there are many people who say that they have seen these people who disappeared 80, 100 years ago, yet they haven't aged. I don't know. I think that's very possible. All right, let's talk about Moses. Potiphar, Pharaoh's eldest daughter, raised Moses, who underwent the Baccarat process under the supervision of the Phototop. This is how Moses acquired his supernatural powers and spiritual talents to communicate with higher and supreme powers. Like the pharaohs of the royal palace, Moses had magical powers. I found Moses to be a very tough and cruel but brilliant man with a special leadership talent. Everyone was afraid of him, yet everyone respected him. He escorted approximately 3 million people out of Egypt to Israel in the journey that took 10 years as opposed to the 40 years that is written in the Torah. For the record, they could do the same journey in less than half a year. The reason why Moses made the journey to Israel take much longer was to rid of the old generation and their slave mentality. Sounds like a calling. Don't know. While simultaneously preparing the new generation, Joshua and Caleb, for a new and powerful life with a different set of values as a free nation. In the first 49 days, until they reached Mount Sinai, 1/3 of the people died, mainly due to the intense heat of the Sinai desert. The deceased consisted of primarily elderly people. Imagine that. Another significant number of people died during the following years due to an incomprehensible disease. Well, that's interesting. And another 250,000 were ordered to be exterminated by Moses due to their betrayal in the supreme power. Well, I would say that that's pretty permanent, strict. This extermination was due to the famous story known as the golden calf. The difference is that instead of the 24,000 people butchered, as it was written in the Torah, Moses ordered the extermination of 250,000. Many more people were killed along the way. Moses ordered the extermination of 250, many were also killed by various tribes that attacked them on the way to Israel. No one was buried on the way to the Holy Land other than Moses and Aaron as the high priest. That's odd because in the Bible, Torah, that Moses was not buried. In fact, the archangel Michael came and took Moses's body. You can read the story in the book of Jude. Bodies were either left behind, or at most they were burned. True Jewish burial began only after the Jews entered Israel. The Jews arrived in Israel without Moses. They were about 1.5 million people, including the calculation of the increase in population due to the reproduction within the 10-year period. Most of the people were young as planned. Wow. Now think about this. Let's all rise up to the 60,000 feet level here and look at this. This is eugenics. And this is exactly what the eugenics movement is about. It's now in a different form known as Marxism, communism, but it's still the same thing. And look at the number. They said that there were 3 million that left and only 1.5 million that went in, and most of those were young. You know what? That's a hell of a nutrition reduction there. I mean, come on. And it was exactly what Moses, they didn't need old people in there. They were a liability. Where do you hear that today? Wow, this is really interesting. I mean, this is eugenics. This is how it works. I can't see the chat room, but I'd be really curious if any other see this. This is I had never seen it from this perspective before, I got to tell you. So hey, it's opening channels of thought here. This is messed up, man. If this is part of this deity, this entity, it's just messed up. Reflecting my past. Okay. As I write my memories of my first reincarnation, I delve deeper into my soul, and many memories come to me from the past. Nevertheless, living over 900 years, there are many stories and memories I can only imagine. I don't remember a large portion of it, but what I do remember, for the most part, is unimportant to me and does not feel like an issue that has any impact on my current path in life. I chose not to document countless stories which only interest me and are not significant at the moment. Getting into the small details takes me into deeper places within myself. That makes it unnecessarily difficult for me. It also causes me to disconnect from my current self and my current environment. I also feel that it's an effect of my current work and the mission within the TLS, the light system. That's what TLS stands for. I recently took a new position upon myself that is vital to improving our current global situation. I cannot discuss this mission as it is currently active, very dangerous, and is a result of malevolent forces that are operating in our world. I have no doubt of that. We're seeing their hand now. I try not to let my memories of the past interfere with my work, but they intrigue me daily and they intrude upon my reality. I added that. I do not want nor will not fail. I do not want and will not fix, certainly not now, and not in the situation we are currently in today. In my opinion, extraordinary and significant events are about to happen that will affect the future of us all. No shit. And I would like to be on the positive side of the equation. Hey, failure is not an option right now. I love the attitude. Neither I nor my family can afford failure at that moment. Not an option. I also feel that I became carried away and I may be revealing too much information, which is not what my superior intended when he gave me permission and great privilege to document these past 10 years. It is difficult for me to admit, but I regret that I did not listen to the rabbi at the time when he asked and insisted that I document and write everything. If I would have listened to his advice, today there would be at least 10, if not more, volumes of the rays of light, with an abundance of mysticism and insights that would one day serve the entire world. Can I ask, why are you waiting? All right, we'll go on a little bit more. This is okay. We're going to get into King Solomon. This should be interesting. The Holy Temple. The first Holy Temple was built by King Solomon in the year 2929. That's my number, according to the Hebrew calendar, 831 BC. The first Holy Temple was built in roughly 7 years and lasted for 410 years before it was robbed, burned, and destroyed by the Babylonians in the year 421. Being that the construction of the temple was very costly, King Solomon financed its construction by imposing heavy taxes on the people. The temple was constructed from various materials such as local rocks and stones, trees such as cedars and cypress trees, metals such as copper and primarily gold, which covered most of the internal structure. The inception of the idea to construct the Holy Temple came from King David. His initial intention was to create a house to serve God, but it turned to be an ego-driven process that was also used to collect more taxes. Corruption, like today, was almost everywhere. King David was preoccupied with wars, political issues, economic issues, and personal problems, which prevented him from realizing his dreams and building the first Holy Temple. King Solomon, King David's son, manifested the idea of the first Holy Temple, but it came at a heavy price to the people of the nation. The first Holy Temple was composed of 3 main parts. The main hall, the welcoming hall, was the first part of the Holy Temple. The second part of the temple was the main temple, which contained the menorah and the main altar in which incense was burned and animals were sacrificed. There were various altars placed in different areas within the temple complex. The third part of the temple was known as the Holy of Holies, in which the Ark of the Covenant, along with the Kuvam, were located. The Kuvam was made out of gold. I don't know why they were referred to as the Kuvam to this very day. They were relatively small statues compared to the size of the Holy of Holies and the temple itself. The statues were half eagle and half human. One of the Kruvam was masculine, with a male human body. The other was feminine, with a female human body. This attests to the kind of foreign work or even a kind of idolatry within the temple itself, which is a complete contradiction to the basic belief of the Jewish people. The Holy of Holies was also known as the Divar, or the Zavar, I think it's the Var, and sat on what we know today as the foundation stone within the dome of the rock, and they have found it as we know today. And by the way, this foundation stone could not have been made by humans. That's all I got to say. It's something else was involved. The foundation stone was used as a stand for the altar. The sacrifices were made, and the incense was burned on the foundation stone. The foundation stone had, and still has, very strong energy and power, and its geographically location is the energy center of our planet, as well as the energy center of the universe as a whole. The origins of the name of even, and I can't pronounce that, folk. I don't know if it's Hai Jatya, the foundation stone, is based on the essence of the term founded, translated from Hebrew, which means that the origin of the creation of energy and creation itself was founded in this geographical location. The place itself is extremely energetically rich. In a straight line, deep underground, are the contents of the Holy of Holies, which is concealed there until this very day. The room in which these items are hidden, like the rest of the temple, was designed and built by King Solomon. A short time before the destruction of the first holy temple, King Hosea ordered to move, store, hide all the holy content of the Holy of Holies in the hidden room. This was carried out by Mano and Gamma with the intention that none of these holy items would fall into the hands of any Gentile that would want to destroy the temple. Only the high priest was allowed to go inside the Holy of Holies once a year during the Day of Atonement, also known as Yom Kippur. However, the high priest and his assistants would go there every so often, not just on the Day of Atonement. King Solomon would spend time there in isolation for the purpose of spiritual elevation. He would even use the Holy of Holies as a place to read and write. Wow. My knowledge and my memories regarding King Solomon and his father take me back to the past. It's a very strange feeling. I know them and their heirs very well. As a high priest, I was their counselor, their doctor, and dare say even their psychologist. David and Solomon, who were the founders of the first holy temple, were very strong and very smart, but very corrupt in their nature. They were greedy, powerful, and respected. Their personal lives were utter chaos as a family of nobility. It would define them as a dysfunctional one. Within the family itself, there was incest, rape, and various murders. There was also wars over power and inheritance. There was betrayal between all members of the family, from the grandparents to the grandchildren, along with their descendants. David and Solomon preserved their kingdoms by killing every possible regime. During most of his reign, David was preoccupied with different wars. In his honor, Solomon, his son, practiced peace and quieted and almost no war or resistance except for his first years. King David lived about 70 years. He ruled the people with a strong hand. He conquered a lot of land and expanded his kingdom. David was very handsome. However, he was short and had red hair. Read about his son Absalom. That's a very interesting story. He was known to be an impulsive, pleasant, smart, but very cruel and corrupt person. He had many women and mistresses and a large number of children and descendants. On the other hand, His youngest son, King Solomon, was crowned king at the age of 12 until his death at the age of 52. He was tall and handsome. He was a king who knew less wars, but also lived his life with absolute chaos. He was known as a wise man. He was also had countless women and mistresses, and of course, countless children and descendants. In order to ensure his reign and dominance in this kingdom, even though he was the youngest king, the child of King David, he was forced to murder his brother and some of his advisors and friends who supported the older children of King David. It is funny to me that the Jewish and Christian tradition are waiting for the Messiah to come from the family of King David. Jesus was already considered part of the King David family and was already a Messiah to the Christians. The Jews are still waiting for the same Messiah from the family of King David. It's all nonsense and fairy tales. May God help us all if the Messiah indeed shall come from a dysfunctional family. I hope the days of the Messiah are near, and when he arrives, I pray and hope that he is pure, more whole, more loving, and more enlightened. It is important to me to inform the reader that King Solomon is Adam in my current reincarnation. I don't know what that means. He says, of course, some of their wives, mistresses, children, and grandchildren were souls that I know today as part. Probably many of us, and we'll stop right there. Wouldn't surprise me at all that many of us there are out there that would actually have the bloodline, if in fact Solomon or David actually lived. They never actually found their actual kingdoms, but who knows? Wow, what a head trip. I mean, folks, we just went through like 1,000 years, It's interesting. It's interesting to read different perspectives of this time. And doesn't it seem like this is all playing into this, whatever we're about to walk into? We're at the door. There's no going back. We've crossed the precipice. I'll be joining a group over on Andromeda 7 on the 20th. I know all the Andromeda team will be there. Robert V is going to be there. But yeah, let's usher this in together. We can do this. We can. I don't find this that, we're just randomly coming across these books, because this book here definitely has the vibe of transition. Well, thank you, Susie Q. Appreciate it, darling. Can I repeat what? You just have to rewind the tape. It's quite interesting, though. Yeah, I tell you, folks, and we'll continue to read it tomorrow. Yeah, it's fun. It is. This is really a trip. You don't need the drugs to enhance the physiology of the whole process, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? All right, folks. Love you all. Thank you. You're beautiful, groovy people. I appreciate you oh so much. And it's a trip, man. That's all I got to say. It's a trip. And I'm glad y'all are with me on this thing. I mean, I'm driving the bus, and I know Robert V and the others, they pick up driving the bus on the other days, and that's good, because you get a lot of different bus drivers. But yeah, well, you're welcome, Brian. It's amazing, isn't it? Okay, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourselves, and you then can be good